The morning sun streamed through the tall windows of Kensington Palace as Kate finished her second cup of tea. She had been up since dawn, reviewing the day's schedule with her private secretary. 3 official engagements, a charity lunch, and an evening reception awaited her. It was going to be another busy day in the life of the Princess of Wales. Charlotte bounced into the breakfast room, her school uniform slightly wrinkled from the morning rush. At 9 years old, she had inherited her mother's grace, but also possessed a spirited independence that sometimes worried Kate. The young princess had been quieter than usual lately, and Kate couldn't shake the feeling that something was troubling her daughter. "Good morning, sweetheart," Kate said, smoothing Charlotte's hair as she sat down. "Did you sleep well?" Charlotte nodded, but didn't meet her mother's eyes. She picked at her breakfast, moving the scrambled eggs around her plate without eating much. Kate watched her carefully, noticing the dark circles under her daughter's eyes that makeup couldn't hide on such a young face. "Charlotte, you've barely touched your food. Are you feeling all right?" Kate's voice carried the concern that only a mother could have. "I'm fine, Mummy," Charlotte replied quietly, but her voice lacked its usual cheerfulness. William entered the breakfast room, adjusting his tie as he grabbed a piece of toast. He kissed Kate's forehead and ruffled Charlotte's hair. "Morning, Princess," he said to his daughter. "Ready for another day at school?" Charlotte forced a small smile for her father, but said nothing. William caught Kate's worried glance and raised an eyebrow in silent question. Kate shook her head slightly, indicating they would talk later. The drive to school was unusually quiet. Charlotte stared out the window at the London streets, watching people go about their morning routines. Kate tried several times to start a conversation, asking about Charlotte's upcoming art project and whether she was excited about the school play auditions next week. Each time, Charlotte gave short, polite answers that revealed nothing about what was really on her mind. When they arrived at the prestigious private school that Charlotte attended, Kate walked her daughter to the entrance, as she always did. The other parents nodded respectfully, some attempting small talk, but Kate's attention was focused entirely on Charlotte. "Have a wonderful day, my love," Kate said, bending down to hug her daughter goodbye. Charlotte hugged her back, but Kate felt a tremor in the small arms that wrapped around her neck. When Charlotte pulled away, Kate was certain she saw tears threatening to spill from her daughter's eyes. "Charlotte, wait," Kate called softly, but Charlotte had already turned and was walking through the school doors without looking back. Kate stood there for a moment, watching until Charlotte disappeared from view. Something was definitely wrong, and as a mother, she felt helpless not knowing what it was. She made a mental note to speak with Charlotte's teacher, Mrs. Henderson, later that day. The morning's first engagement was at a children's hospital in central London. Kate threw herself into the work, visiting with young patients and their families, reading stories, and bringing smiles to faces that had seen too much pain for their age. It was work that filled her heart, but today she found it difficult to concentrate completely. Charlotte's troubled face kept appearing in her mind. During a brief break between hospital visits, Kate called Charlotte's school. Mrs. Henderson was understanding, but could offer little insight. "Charlotte has been quieter than usual in class," the teacher confirmed. "She's still doing her work well, but she seems distant. I've tried to engage her in conversations, but she deflects my questions. Perhaps something is happening at home that's worrying her." Kate assured Mrs. Henderson that everything was fine at home, though she wasn't entirely certain that was true. Royal life came with unique pressures, even for children. Perhaps Charlotte was beginning to understand the weight of her future responsibilities in ways that Kate and William hadn't anticipated. The charity lunch was a blur of polite conversation and carefully choreographed interactions. Kate smiled and nodded at all the right moments, but her mind kept wandering to her daughter. She found herself checking her phone repeatedly, hoping for some message from the school or from William, anything that might give her a clue about what was troubling Charlotte. By the afternoon, Kate had made a decision. She would pick Charlotte up from school personally instead of having the driver do it. She needed to create an opportunity for a real conversation with her daughter, away from the formalities and schedules that governed so much of their lives. The The school pickup area was busy with parents and nannies collecting their children. Kate waited in the car, watching the stream of uniformed children emerge from the building. When she finally spotted Charlotte, her heart sank. Her daughter was walking slowly, her shoulders slumped, looking nothing like the vibrant, confident girl she usually was. Charlotte was surprised to see her mother waiting in the car. "Mummy, where's Davies?" she asked, referring to their regular driver. "I thought we could spend some time together," Kate said gently. "Just the two of us. Would you like to stop for ice cream?" Charlotte's face brightened slightly at the prospect, the first genuine emotion Kate had seen from her all day. "Can we go to that place near Hyde Park? The one with the funny flavors?" "Of course we can," Kate smiled, feeling like she was finally making progress. The ice cream shop was small and cozy, tucked away from the main tourist areas. Kate had discovered it months ago during a rare afternoon when she had been able to slip away from her official duties. The owner, an elderly Italian man named Giuseppe, had promised discretion, and he had kept his word. Kate felt safe there, knowing she and Charlotte could have a normal mother-daughter moment without cameras or curious onlookers. Charlotte chose a scoop of lavender honey ice cream, while Kate opted for classic vanilla. They sat at a small table near the window, watching people walk by on the street outside. For a few minutes, they ate in comfortable silence, but Kate could sense that Charlotte was working up the courage to say something. "Mummy," Charlotte began hesitantly, "can I ask you something?" "Of course, sweetheart. You can ask me anything." Charlotte took a deep breath, her small fingers gripping her spoon tightly. "Do you ever wish things were different? That we weren't, royal?" The question caught Kate off guard. She set down her own spoon and looked carefully at her daughter's face. Charlotte's eyes were serious, much too serious for a 9-year-old. "Sometimes I think about what life would be like if things were different," Kate answered honestly. "But, Charlotte, being part of our family is special. Yes, it comes with responsibilities, but it also gives us the chance to help people and make a real difference in the world." Charlotte nodded slowly, but Kate could see that her answer hadn't really addressed whatever was bothering her daughter. "Is there something specific that's worrying you about being royal?" Kate pressed gently. Charlotte looked down at her ice cream, which was beginning to melt in the warm afternoon sun streaming through the window. "It's just, people expect things from us, don't they? They expect us to be perfect all the time." Kate's heart ached at the wisdom and burden she heard in her daughter's young voice. "Oh, my darling girl," she said, reaching across the table to take Charlotte's hand. "No one expects you to be perfect, and anyone who doesn't understand what really matters." But even as Kate said the words, she knew they weren't entirely true. The public, the media, even their own staff sometimes seemed to expect a level of perfection from the royal family that was impossible for anyone to maintain, let alone a child. Charlotte looked up at her mother with eyes that seemed older than her years. "But what if I do something wrong? What if I embarrass our family?" The vulnerability in Charlotte's voice made Kate want to wrap her daughter in her arms and protect her from all the pressures and expectations that came with their position. Instead, she squeezed Charlotte's hand gently. "Charlotte, you could never embarrass our family. You're kind, smart, funny, and brave. Those are the qualities that matter most." Charlotte seemed to consider this for a moment. "Promise?" "I promise," Kate said firmly, though she couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to Charlotte's concerns than she was revealing. As they finished their ice cream and prepared to head home, Kate made another mental note. She would speak with William tonight about reducing some of Charlotte's public appearances and commitments. Perhaps they had been asking too much of her too soon. The last thing Kate wanted was for Charlotte to feel overwhelmed by the expectations that came with her birthright. The drive home was more relaxed than the morning had been. Charlotte chatted about her day at school, telling Kate about a science experiment they had done and a funny story her friend Emma had shared at lunch. Kate listened gratefully, relieved to hear her daughter sounding more like herself. But as they pulled through the gates of Kensington Palace, Kate noticed Charlotte's demeanor shift again. The animated chatter stopped, and the worried expression returned to her young face. It was as if the palace itself represented something that troubled Charlotte deeply. That evening, After Charlotte had gone to bed, Kate and William sat in their private sitting room discussing the day. Kate shared her concerns about their daughter, describing the morning's quiet mood and the conversation over ice cream. She asked if I ever wished we weren't royal, Kate told William, watching his face carefully for his reaction. William set down the briefing papers he had been reviewing and gave Kate his full attention. What did you tell her? I try to focus on the positive aspects of our role, the opportunities we have to help people. But, William, I think she's feeling pressure that we didn't realize she was experiencing. William nodded thoughtfully. I've noticed she seems less enthusiastic about public events lately. Last week, when we visited that school opening, she seemed uncomfortable with all the attention. Maybe we should speak with her teacher again, or perhaps arrange for her to talk with someone professionally, Kate suggested. A child psychologist who understands the unique pressures of our situation. That might be a good idea, William agreed. The last thing we want is for Charlotte to feel burdened by expectations she's too young to handle. As Kate prepared for bed that night, she couldn't stop thinking about the look in Charlotte's eyes during their conversation. There had been something there, something deeper than just the normal anxieties of growing up royal. Kate had the unsettling feeling that Charlotte had wanted to tell her something specific, but had held back. She made a promise to herself that she would create more opportunities for honest, open conversations with her daughter. Whatever was troubling Charlotte, Kate was determined to help her work through it. The role of being royal would always be part of their lives, but being a mother came first, always. The next morning brought no improvement in Charlotte's mood. If anything, she seemed even more withdrawn than the day before. Kate watched her daughter push cereal around her bowl without eating, her small face pale and drawn. The dark circles under Charlotte's eyes suggested she hadn't slept well, despite going to bed at her usual time. Charlotte, you really need to eat something, Kate said gently, sitting down next to her daughter at the breakfast table. You have a big day ahead at school. I'm not very hungry, Mummy, Charlotte replied, her voice barely above a whisper. William looked up from his newspaper, his brow furrowed with concern. Princess, is there something bothering you that you'd like to talk about? Charlotte shook her head quickly, but Kate caught the flash of panic that crossed her daughter's face. Whatever was troubling Charlotte, she was definitely not ready to share it with her parents. The morning routine preceded in tense silence. Charlotte dressed for school mechanically, gathered her books without her usual chatter about the day ahead, and sat quietly in the car during the drive to school. Kate tried several different approaches to draw her daughter out, asking about upcoming tests, weekend plans, and even whether she wanted to invite friends over for a play date. Each attempt was met with polite but minimal responses. When they arrived at school, Kate walked Charlotte to the entrance, as always. This time, she made sure to catch Mrs. Henderson's eye and nodded toward her office, indicating she wanted to speak privately after Charlotte went to class. Have a wonderful day, my love, Kate said, hugging Charlotte goodbye. This time, Charlotte clung to her mother a little longer than usual, and Kate felt the same tremor in her small frame that she had noticed the day before. When Charlotte finally let go and walked toward her classroom, Kate watched her carefully. She noticed that Charlotte avoided eye contact with several of her classmates and walked with her head down, very different from her usual confident stride. Mrs. Henderson met Kate in her office a few minutes later. The teacher was a kind woman in her 50s who had been working with royal children for over a decade. She understood the unique pressures they faced and had always been supportive of Charlotte's needs. I'm very concerned about Charlotte, Kate began without preamble. She's been unusually quiet and withdrawn for the past few days. Has anything happened at school that might explain this change? Mrs. Henderson settled into her chair with a thoughtful expression. I've been wondering the same thing myself. Charlotte's academic performance hasn't suffered, but her social interactions have definitely changed. She used to be quite outgoing with her classmates, but lately she's been keeping to herself during breaks and lunch periods. Has she mentioned anything specific that might be troubling her? Not directly, but Mrs. Henderson paused, choosing her words carefully. There was an incident yesterday during lunch that might be relevant. I didn't think much of it at the time, but given your concerns, perhaps I should share it. Kate leaned forward, her her heart rate quickening. "Please, tell me everything." Charlotte was sitting alone at lunch, which isn't unusual for her sometimes. She likes to read while she eats. But I noticed a group of older girls from year 6 approaching her table. They seemed to be having quite an animated conversation with her, though I was too far away to hear what was being said. Kate felt a cold knot forming in her stomach. What happened then? When I looked again a few minutes later, the older girls had left, but Charlotte was no longer reading. She was just sitting there, staring at her lunch tray. She didn't eat anything for the rest of the lunch period. Did you speak with her about it? I tried to approach her after lunch, but she insisted everything was fine. You know how polite and composed Charlotte is. She would never want to cause trouble or worry anyone unnecessarily. Kate nodded, knowing exactly what Mrs. Henderson meant. Charlotte had been taught from an early age to handle difficult situations with grace and dignity, sometimes to her own detriment. Do you know which girls were talking to her? Could you perhaps speak with them? Mrs. Henderson looked uncomfortable. That's where things become a bit complicated. The girls were from the Pemberton family. Their father is a prominent businessman, and their mother sits on several charity boards. They're not typically the type of children who cause problems, but, Kate prompted. Well, there have been some rumbling among the parents lately about increased security measures and media attention around the school since Charlotte started attending. Some families feel it's disruptive to the normal school environment. Kate felt her blood pressure rising. She had been afraid something like this might happen eventually. Despite the school's reputation for discretion and its experience with high-profile families, there would always be some who resented the attention that came with educating royal children. Are you suggesting these girls might have said something to Charlotte about the media attention or security presence? I can't be certain, but it would explain Charlotte's sudden change in behavior. If the older girls made her feel responsible for disrupting the school environment, it would certainly weigh heavily on a child as sensitive as Charlotte. Kate closed her eyes briefly, feeling the familiar weight of responsibility that came with protecting her children from the negative aspects of their royal status. What do you recommend we do? I think I should speak with the Pemberton girls privately, just to understand what was discussed. I'll be discreet, of course, but if they did say something inappropriate to Charlotte, it needs to be addressed. Yes, please do that. And, Mrs. Henderson, if there are other families who are unhappy about the security or media attention, perhaps we should consider alternative arrangements for Charlotte's education. Mrs. Henderson looked alarmed. Oh no, Your Royal Highness, please don't feel that Charlotte should leave. She's a wonderful student, and most of the families here are perfectly comfortable with the situation. It's only a small minority who have raised concerns, and even then, they haven't been directly confrontational about it. Kate appreciated the teacher's reassurance, but she couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning of challenges Charlotte would face as she grew older and became more recognizable to the public. I'd like to pick Charlotte up myself again today, Kate said. Perhaps during the drive home, she'll feel comfortable enough to tell me what's really bothering her. That sounds like an excellent plan. I'll make sure to observe her more closely today and let you know if I notice anything else. Kate left the school feeling more worried than when she had arrived. The thought of older children making Charlotte feel responsible for disrupting their school environment made her angry and protective. At the same time, she knew this was exactly the kind of situation they would face repeatedly as Charlotte grew up. The challenge was helping her daughter develop the resilience to handle these situations without losing her natural confidence and joy. The rest of the morning passed slowly for Kate. She had a meeting with representatives from one of her patronages, a children's literacy charity, but found it difficult to concentrate on the discussion about new reading programs. Her mind kept wandering to Charlotte, wondering what was happening at school and whether Mrs. Henderson had been able to speak with the Pemberton girls. Just before lunch, Kate received a text message from William. How did the meeting with Charlotte's teacher go? Any insights? She replied quickly. Possible bullying situation with older girls. We'll know more after school pickup. William's response came immediately. Keep me posted. Cancel afternoon meetings if needed to deal with this. Kate appreciated William's support, but she knew that canceling official engagements was rarely an option without significant advance notice. Instead, She would have to find a way to balance her royal duties with her role as a concerned mother. The afternoon engagement was a visit to a youth center in East London. Normally, Kate would have enjoyed interacting with the teenagers there, hearing about their programs and aspirations. Today, however, she found herself studying the group dynamics, wondering if these young people had ever experienced the kind of social pressure that Charlotte might be facing. During a break in the scheduled activities, Kate found herself in conversation with Sarah, a 16-year-old who had been involved with the center for several years. Sarah was articulate and confident, clearly comfortable speaking with adults. "Can I ask you something, Sarah?" Kate said. "Have you ever experienced situations where other young people made you feel different or unwelcome because of something beyond your control?" Sarah considered the question seriously. "You mean like bullying?" "Not exactly bullying, but more subtle pressure. Making someone feel responsible for things they can't change about their circumstances." Sarah nodded, understanding. "Oh yes, definitely. When I first started coming here, some of the other kids made comments about my family's financial situation. They didn't say anything directly mean, but they made sure I knew I was different. They would talk about things I couldn't afford or places I couldn't go, always when I was listening. How did you handle it?" "At first, I just stopped coming for a while. I felt like I didn't belong. But then one of the counselors here talked to me about it. She helped me understand that their behavior was more about their own insecurities than about me. And she spoke to them about it too, not in a confrontational way, but just helping them understand how their words affected others." Kate found Sarah's story both helpful and heartbreaking. The parallels to Charlotte's situation were clear, even though the circumstances were quite different. "Do you think it helped when the counselors spoke to the other young people?" "Definitely. They didn't suddenly become my best friends or anything, but they stopped making the comments. And eventually, some of them actually became really good friends. I think they just needed to understand that I was dealing with stuff they had never experienced." As Kate continued with the youth center visit, she found herself thinking about Sarah's experience. Perhaps the solution to Charlotte's situation wasn't to remove her from the school or avoid the problem, but to address it directly and educatively. The afternoon couldn't end quickly enough for Kate. She left the youth center as soon as protocol allowed and drove straight to Charlotte's school. She arrived early and waited in the car, watching other parents and caretakers gather for pickup time. When Charlotte emerged from the school building, Kate was relieved to see that she looked slightly better than she had that morning. She wasn't smiling, but she didn't have the same defeated posture that had worried Kate so much. "How was your day, sweetheart?" Kate asked as Charlotte settled into the car. "It was okay," Charlotte replied, which was more positive than any response Kate had gotten in days. "Did you learn anything interesting?" "We started a new project in history class about different types of governments. We're supposed to research how different countries make decisions and what role leaders play." Kate smiled, sensing an opportunity for conversation. "That sounds fascinating. Are you going to research any particular country?" Charlotte was quiet for a moment. "I thought maybe I could research how the constitutional monarchy works in Britain. Mrs. Henderson said it might be interesting since I might have some insights others don't." Kate felt a mix of pride and concern. On one hand, she was glad Charlotte was engaging with her heritage in an educational context. On the other hand, she worried that this assignment might put Charlotte in an uncomfortable spotlight with her classmates. "That's a wonderful idea, Charlotte. Would you like some help with your research?" "Daddy, and I could share some insights about how the system actually works." Charlotte nodded enthusiastically, showing more interest than Kate had seen from her in days. "Could you really?" Mrs. Henderson said most people don't understand the difference between what people think the royal family does and what we actually do. "We would love to help you with that," Kate assured her. "It's important for people to understand the real role of constitutional monarchy in modern Britain." As they continued driving home, Kate decided to gently probe for information about the incident Mrs. Henderson had described. "Charlotte, how are things going with your classmates? Are you getting along well with everyone?" Charlotte's improved mood seemed to deflate slightly. "Mostly yes. Is there anyone you're having difficulty with?" Charlotte bit her lip, a habit she had developed when she was thinking carefully about how to respond to a question. There's some older girls who, well, they ask me questions sometimes. Kate's heart rate quickened, but she kept her voice calm and encouraging. What kind of questions? They want to know things about our family, about where we live, and what it's like being royal. At first, it seemed like they were just curious, but lately, Charlotte trailed off, staring out the window. Lately what, sweetheart? Lately it feels like they're asking questions to make me feel bad about things I can't change. Kate felt anger rising in her chest, but she forced herself to remain calm for Charlotte's sake. Can you give me an example? Charlotte took a deep breath. Yesterday at lunch, they came over to my table and started asking me about the security guards and the photographers. They said some of the other families are annoyed about all the attention at school. They asked me if I thought it was fair that everyone else has to deal with extra rules and procedures because of me. Kate's hands tightened on the steering wheel, but she managed to keep her voice steady. What did you tell them? I didn't know what to say. I never asked for any of those things, but they're right that it affects other people. I started thinking that maybe I should go to a different school, so everyone else could just have a normal time. Kate pulled the car over to the side of the road and turned to face her daughter completely. Charlotte's eyes were bright with unshed tears, and Kate could see the weight of responsibility and guilt that her 9-year-old was carrying. Charlotte, look at me, Kate said firmly but gently. None of this is your fault. You didn't choose to be born into our family, and you certainly don't deserve to be made to feel guilty about circumstances beyond your control. But, Mummy, they're not wrong. There are extra security measures, and sometimes photographers do follow us to school. It does affect other families. Kate's heart broke at the maturity and self-awareness in her daughter's voice. Yes, those things are true, but that doesn't make them your responsibility or your fault. And it certainly doesn't give anyone the right to make you feel bad about who you are. Charlotte wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. I just want to fit in and be normal like everyone else. I know you do, sweetheart. And in many ways, you're normal. You're a smart, kind, funny girl who loves to read and learn new things. The fact that you also happen to be a princess doesn't change those fundamental things about who you are. Kate could see that Charlotte was listening carefully, but she wasn't entirely convinced. The damage done by the older girl's comments would take time and effort to repair. Charlotte, I want you to know that, Daddy, and I will always support you, no matter what. If you really feel uncomfortable at this school, we can explore other options. But I hope you won't let a few unkind comments from girls who don't understand your situation drive you away from a place where you've been happy. Charlotte nodded slowly. I do like school, mostly. And Mrs. Henderson is really nice. It's just hard sometimes when people make comments. I understand completely. Would it help if I spoke to Mrs. Henderson about addressing this situation with the older girls? Charlotte considered this for a moment. We are not to get them in trouble? I don't want to make things worse by having them be angry at me for getting them in trouble. Kate marveled at her daughter's wisdom and compassion, even in the face of unkind treatment. I'll ask Mrs. Henderson to handle it in a way that helps them understand how their comments affect you, without making them feel attacked. Sometimes people say hurtful things because they don't realize the impact of their words. Charlotte seemed relieved by this plan. As they resumed driving home, she began talking more freely about her day, sharing details about her classes and interactions with friends. Kate listened carefully, noting which classmates Charlotte mentioned positively and which situations seemed to cause her stress. By the time they arrived at Kensington Palace, Charlotte was acting more like her usual self. The conversation had clearly helped her process some of the emotions she had been carrying, and Kate felt hopeful that they were on the right track to resolving the situation. That evening, Kate shared the details of her conversation with Charlotte with William. They spent a long time discussing how to balance protecting their daughter from the negative aspects of royal life, while still preparing her for the realities she would face as she grew older. I think we need to have more regular conversations with Charlotte about these kinds of situations, William said. Not just when problems arise, but ongoing discussions about how to handle the unique challenges that come with our position. Kate agreed, and I think we should also consider having her speak with someone professionally. Not because anything is wrong with her, but because she's dealing with pressures that most children don't experience. It might help her develop coping strategies. As Kate tucked Charlotte into bed that night, she felt cautiously optimistic about their progress. Charlotte seemed more relaxed than she had in days, and she had even expressed excitement about working on her history project with Kate and William. "Mummy," Charlotte said as Kate was about to turn off the bedside lamp, "thank you for listening to me today. I feel better about everything." "I'm so glad, sweetheart. Remember, you can always talk to Daddy and me about anything that's bothering you. We're here to support you no matter what." Charlotte smiled, the first genuine smile Kate had seen from her in days. "I love you, Mummy." "I love you too, Charlotte. Sweet dreams." As Kate left Charlotte's room, she felt a deep sense of gratitude for the breakthrough they had experienced that day. At the same time, she knew this was just the beginning of helping Charlotte navigate the complex world of growing up royal. There would be many more challenges ahead, but at least now they had opened the lines of communication that would be essential for facing them together. The next morning brought encouraging signs that Charlotte was beginning to recover from her recent troubles. She came down to breakfast dressed and ready for school, and while she wasn't quite back to her usual chattery self, she did eat most of her cereal and even asked William about his plans for the day. "I have meetings at the palace this morning, then I'm visiting a veterans housing project this afternoon," William told her. "What about you, Princess? Anything exciting happening at school today?" "We're starting our history research projects today," Charlotte replied with genuine enthusiasm. "Mrs. Henderson is going to help us learn how to use the library database to find reliable sources." Kate felt a wave of relief hearing Charlotte sound interested in her schoolwork again. "That sounds wonderful. And remember, Daddy and I are happy to help you with the constitutional monarchy research when you're ready." Charlotte nodded, then hesitated for a moment before speaking. "Mummy, do you think other kids will think it's unfair that I have access to information they don't?" The question showed how much Charlotte had been thinking about the comments from the older girls. Kate was proud of her daughter for considering the feelings of others, but she was also concerned that Charlotte was becoming too focused on trying to make everyone else comfortable at the expense of her own confidence. Charlotte, having access to different information and experiences is part of what makes each student's research unique, Kate explained. Emma probably knows more about marine biology because her father is a marine scientist. James knows more about farming because he lives on his family's farm. You know more about government because of our family's role. That's what makes everyone's projects interesting and different. William nodded in agreement. That's exactly right. The important thing is that you use your knowledge thoughtfully and share what you learn with your classmates in a way that helps everyone understand the topic better. Charlotte seemed to consider this perspective carefully. "So, it's not cheating to use what I know from our family?" "Not at all," Kate assured her. "It's using your resources wisely, which is exactly what good research requires." The drive to school was much more pleasant than it had been in recent days. Charlotte talked about her project ideas and asked questions about how constitutional monarchies worked in other countries. Kate was grateful to see her daughter's natural curiosity returning. When they arrived at school, Kate noticed Mrs. Henderson waiting near the entrance. The teacher approached the car as Charlotte was gathering her school bag. "Good morning, Charlotte," Mrs. Henderson said warmly. "Are you excited about starting your research project today?" "Yes, Mrs. Henderson. I've been thinking about my topic all morning." "Wonderful. I look forward to hearing your ideas. Now, why don't you head to class? I'd like to have a quick word with your mother." Charlotte said goodbye to Kate and walked confidently toward the school building. Kate was pleased to see that she walked with her head up and even waved to a few classmates along the way. "She looks much better today," Mrs. Henderson observed, watching Charlotte disappear into the building. "Yes, we had a good conversation yesterday. She told me about the situation with the older girls." Mrs. Henderson nodded. "I was able to speak with the Pemberton sisters yesterday afternoon. As I suspected, they didn't realize how their comments were affecting Charlotte. They seemed genuinely surprised when I explained that their questions had made her feel unwelcome at school." "How did they respond to that information?" "They were actually quite apologetic. I think they had been influenced by some comments they heard their parents making about the increased security and media attention. They didn't understand the difference between discussing legitimate concerns about school policies and making a child feel personally responsible for those policies. Kate felt some of her anger toward the girls dissipating. While their behavior had been inappropriate, it sounded like it had stemmed from immaturity and poor guidance rather than deliberate cruelty. Did you speak with their parents as well? I plan to have a conversation with Mrs. Pemberton later today. I think it's important for the parents to understand how their discussions about school policies can influence their children's interactions with classmates. Kate appreciated Mrs. Henderson's thoughtful approach to the situation. Charlotte was worried about the girls getting in trouble because of her complaint. She didn't want to make the situation worse. That's very typical of Charlotte, always thinking about how her actions might affect others. I assured the Pemberton girls that Charlotte hadn't complained or asked for them to be disciplined. I simply explained that, as their teacher, I had noticed changes in Charlotte's behavior and wanted to understand if anything at school was contributing to those changes. What did you tell them about moving forward? I asked them to think about how they would feel if other students made them feel responsible for things beyond their control. I also suggested that if they have genuine curiosity about royal protocols or constitutional monarchy, they could approach Charlotte as a friend seeking to learn, rather than questioning her as if she were responsible for policies she didn't create. Kate felt hopeful about this approach. Do you think they understood the distinction? I believe so. They're actually quite bright girls, and once they understood the impact of their words, they seemed eager to make things right. In fact, they asked if it would be appropriate for them to apologize to Charlotte. What did you tell them? I suggested that rather than a formal apology, which might embarrass Charlotte, they could simply make an effort to include her more naturally in their interactions. Perhaps ask her about her research project or invite her to join them for lunch. Kate thought this was excellent advice. Charlotte would probably be more comfortable with a subtle shift in behavior rather than a dramatic confrontation that drew attention to the previous problems. How do you think Charlotte will handle the transition? I think she'll respond well. Charlotte is naturally social when she feels comfortable, and she's shown remarkable resilience in dealing with difficult situations. Now that she's talked to you about what was bothering her, I expect she'll be more confident in handling similar situations if they arise in the future. As Kate drove away from the school, she felt cautiously optimistic about Charlotte's situation. Mrs. Henderson's handling of the problem had been diplomatic and educational rather than punitive, which seemed like the best possible outcome. Kate's first engagement of the day was a visit to a women's shelter, where she would be meeting with residents and staff to discuss new programs for job training and childcare support. As she prepared for the visit, Kate found herself thinking about the conversation with Mrs. Henderson and wondering how many other families dealt with children being made to feel different or unwelcome because of circumstances beyond their control. The women at the shelter had stories that were very different from Charlotte's, but Kate was struck by some similarities in the emotional challenges they described. Several of the women talked about how their children had been treated at school when other families learned about their housing situation. One mother, Sarah, described how her 10-year-old daughter had been excluded from birthday parties and playdates when parents discovered the family was living in temporary accommodation. Emma started making excuses not to go to school, Sarah explained. She said the other kids looked at her differently once they knew about her situation. She felt like she was being judged for something that wasn't her fault. Kate listened carefully, thinking about the parallels between Emma's experience and Charlotte's recent troubles. Both children had been made to feel responsible for circumstances beyond their control, and both had responded by withdrawing from social situations. How did you help Emma through that difficult time? Kate asked. It took a lot of talking and patience, Sarah replied. I had to help her understand that some people's reactions came from ignorance rather than malice. And I worked with her teacher to address the situation without making Emma feel like she was causing trouble for other families. Kate was impressed by Sarah's approach, which echoed Mrs. Henderson's handling of Charlotte's situation. Did that approach work? Eventually, yes. It helped that Emma's teacher was willing to have some general discussions with the class about different types of housing situations and how families sometimes face challenges that require temporary solutions. It wasn't specifically about Emma, but it helped the other children understand that having different life circumstances doesn't make someone less valuable as a person. Kate found herself wondering whether Charlotte's school might benefit from similar educational discussions about different types of families and circumstances, including royal families. During the lunch portion of the shelter visit, Kate had an opportunity to speak privately with the shelter director, Dr. Martinez, who had extensive experience working with children who face social challenges related to their family circumstances. What advice would you give to parents whose children are struggling with feeling different from their peers? Kate asked. Dr. Martinez considered the question thoughtfully. I think the most important thing is to help children understand that being different isn't the same as being wrong or bad. Every family has unique circumstances, and those differences can actually be strengths rather than sources of shame. How do you help children develop that perspective? We work on building resilience and self-advocacy skills. Children need to understand that they can't control how other people react to their circumstances, but they can control how they respond to those reactions. We also try to help them identify allies, adults, and peers who support them regardless of their family situation. Kate thought about Charlotte's relationship with Mrs. Henderson and with some of her closer friends at school. What role do schools play in supporting children who face these challenges? Schools are crucial. When teachers and administrators create inclusive environments where differences are celebrated rather than stigmatized, it makes an enormous difference for all children. But it requires ongoing effort and education, not just policy statements. As Kate prepared to leave the shelter, she found herself thinking about ways to apply some of Dr. Martinez's insights to Charlotte's situation. Perhaps they could work with Charlotte's school to develop more educational programming around diversity and inclusion that would benefit all students, not just Charlotte. The afternoon brought a meeting with representatives from one of Kate's patronages, a children's mental health charity. The timing felt particularly relevant given her recent concerns about Charlotte's emotional well-being. Dr. Susan Clark, the charity's director, had specifically asked to discuss the unique mental health challenges faced by children in high-profile families. We've been seeing an increase in requests for support from families where children face public attention or unusual social pressures, Dr. Clark explained. The traditional approaches to childhood anxiety and social stress don't always address the specific challenges these children encounter. Kate leaned forward with interest. What kind of challenges are you seeing? Children who feel responsible for their family's public image. Children who struggle with a lack of privacy. Children who have difficulty forming genuine friendships because of their family status. These are complex issues that require specialized understanding. What approaches have been most effective? We found that helping children develop a strong sense of personal identity separate from their family's public role is crucial. They need to understand that they are valuable as individuals, not just as representatives of their families. Kate thought about Charlotte's comment about wanting to be normal like everyone else. How do you help children appreciate the positive aspects of their unique circumstances while still allowing them to feel like normal children? It's about balance and perspective. We help them understand that having unique experiences doesn't make them fundamentally different from other children in terms of their basic needs for friendship, acceptance, and personal growth. We also work on developing coping strategies for handling public attention and social pressure. Dr. Clark went on to explain some of the specific techniques they used, including role-playing exercises to help children practice responses to difficult questions or comments, mindfulness practices to manage anxiety, and social skills training focused on building authentic relationships despite status differences. Would you recommend this type of support for children who are just beginning to encounter these challenges? Kate asked. Absolutely. Prevention and early intervention are much more effective than waiting until children are already struggling significantly. Even children who seem to be handling their circumstances well can benefit from having additional tools and strategies. Kate made a mental note to discuss this possibility with William. Charlotte seemed to be recovering well from her recent troubles, but having access to professional support might help her develop resilience for future challenges. When Kate arrived at Charlotte's school for pickup, she was pleased to see her daughter walking out of the building with several classmates, engaged in animated conversation. Charlotte looked relaxed and happy, more like her usual self than she had in days. "How was your day, sweetheart?" Kate asked as Charlotte settled into the car. "It was really good, Mummy. I started my research project, and Mrs. Henderson helped me find some excellent sources about constitutional monarchies in Europe. Did you know that there are 12 countries in Europe that still have monarchies?" Kate smiled at Charlotte's enthusiasm. "I didn't know that, but I'd love to hear what you're learning about them." Charlotte launched into a detailed description of her research findings, explaining the differences between absolute monarchies, constitutional monarchies, and symbolic monarchies. Kate was impressed by how much Charlotte had absorbed in just one day and how excited she was about sharing her knowledge. And the best part was that some of my classmates asked me to help them understand the differences for their own projects, Charlotte continued. Emma is researching presidential systems, and she wanted to know how they compare to parliamentary systems with monarchs. "That sounds like a wonderful way to share your knowledge," Kate said. "Did you enjoy helping your classmates?" "I really did. It felt good to be helpful instead of feeling like I was causing problems." Kate's heart ached a little at Charlotte's comment, but she was glad to see that her daughter was finding positive ways to view her unique position. "Charlotte, I hope you're beginning to understand that your knowledge and experiences are gifts you can share, not burdens you need to apologize for." "I think I'm starting to understand that," Charlotte said thoughtfully. Mrs. Henderson said that everyone in the class has different kinds of expertise to contribute, and that's what makes our discussions interesting. Kate was grateful for Mrs. Henderson's wisdom and support. Having a teacher who could help Charlotte see her circumstances in a positive light was invaluable. "Did you have any interactions with the older girls today?" Kate asked casually. "Actually, yes," Charlotte replied, and Kate felt her stomach tense slightly. "Lucy Pemberton came up to me during lunch and asked if I wanted to sit with her and her friends. She seemed really nice, and we talked about our favorite books." Kate felt a wave of relief and admiration for Mrs. Henderson's approach to resolving the situation. Rather than creating a confrontational situation, she had guided the older girls toward including Charlotte naturally in their social interactions. "That sounds lovely. Did you enjoy sitting with them?" "I did. They're all really smart, and they asked me some thoughtful questions about what it's like to travel to different countries. It felt like they were genuinely curious, not like they were trying to make me feel bad." Kate was thrilled to hear the difference in Charlotte's tone when she described this interaction compared to her previous experiences with the older girls. That evening, the family had dinner together without any official engagements or obligations. Charlotte chattered happily about her day, her research project, and her plans for the weekend. William and Kate exchanged satisfied glances, both relieved to see their daughter returning to her normal, confident self. "Mummy, Daddy," Charlotte said as they were finishing dessert, "thank you for helping me understand that it's okay to be different. I was feeling really bad about causing extra work for everyone at school, but now I'm starting to think that maybe I can use what I know to help my classmates learn interesting things." William reached over to squeeze Charlotte's hand. "Princess, you never need to apologize for who you are. And you're absolutely right that your experiences and knowledge can be a wonderful gift to share with others." Kate felt overwhelmed with pride and love for her daughter. Charlotte's resilience and ability to find positive meaning in difficult experiences reminded Kate why she felt so passionate about protecting and nurturing her children's emotional development. "I'm so proud of how you've handled everything this week," Kate told Charlotte. "It takes real strength to work through difficult feelings and come out stronger on the other side." Charlotte beamed at the praise, and Kate could see that her daughter's confidence was genuinely rebuilding rather than just being put on for her parents' benefit. As they prepared for bed that night, Kate reflected on how much had changed in just a few days. Charlotte's troubles had been real and significant, but with open communication, thoughtful intervention from her teacher, and Charlotte's own resilience, they had been able to turn a negative situation into a learning experience. Kate knew there would be more challenges ahead as Charlotte continued to grow up in the public eye. But she felt confident that they had established a foundation of trust and communication that would help them face whatever came next. Most importantly, Charlotte was learning that being royal didn't mean being perfect or trying to please everyone. It meant using her unique position to contribute positively to the world around her. 2 weeks had passed since Charlotte's difficult period at school, and Kate was pleased to see that her daughter seemed to be thriving once again. Charlotte's research project on constitutional monarchy was progressing well, and she had even been invited to present her findings to a younger class as part of their learning about government systems. The morning was particularly special because Charlotte had asked if she could invite her new friend Lucy Pemberton over for a play date after school. Kate was delighted that Charlotte felt comfortable enough to bring a friend home, especially one of the older girls who had initially caused her so much distress. "Are you nervous about having Lucy over?" Kate asked as she helped Charlotte choose an outfit for school. "A little bit," Charlotte admitted. She's never been to a palace before. What if she feels uncomfortable or thinks it's too fancy? Kate smiled at her daughter's considerate nature. "I think Lucy will be excited to see where you live. And remember, the most important thing is that you two enjoy spending time together. The setting is much less important than the friendship." Charlotte nodded thoughtfully. "Should I show her my room first? Or would that seem like showing off? Why don't you ask her what she's interested in seeing? Let her curiosity guide the tour. And, Charlotte, remember that sharing your home with a friend isn't showing off. It's being hospitable." The morning drive to school was filled with Charlotte's excited chatter about her plans for the afternoon. She had thought carefully about activities that she and Lucy could enjoy together, from working on a puzzle to playing in the gardens if the weather was nice. "I thought we could also work on our history projects together," Charlotte said. "Lucy is researching the American presidential system, and I think it would be interesting to compare our findings." Kate was impressed by Charlotte's maturity in planning activities that would be engaging for both girls rather than just focusing on entertaining her guest. When they arrived at school, Kate noticed Mrs. Henderson waiting by the entrance, a warm smile on her face. "Good morning, Charlotte," the teacher said. "Are you looking forward to presenting your research to the Year 4 students this afternoon?" Charlotte's eyes lit up with excitement. "Yes, Mrs. Henderson. I've been practicing my presentation, and Mummy helped me think about how to make it interesting for younger children. I'm sure it will be wonderful. And I understand you have a friend coming over after school." "Yes, Lucy Pemberton. I'm a bit nervous, but also very excited." Mrs. Henderson nodded approvingly. "I think it's lovely that you and Lucy have become friends. She's been asking excellent questions about government systems since your class discussions began." As Charlotte headed into school, Kate had a brief conversation with Mrs. Henderson about how well Charlotte was adjusting to the increased social interactions. "She seems like a completely different child from 2 weeks ago," Mrs. Henderson observed. "More confident, more willing to share her knowledge, and definitely more socially engaged." "We're very grateful for how you handled the situation with the older girls," Kate said. "Your approach made all the difference in helping Charlotte see her circumstances positively. I think the key was helping everyone understand that differences in family circumstances are opportunities for learning rather than sources of division. Charlotte has so much to offer her classmates, and they have a lot to offer her as well." Kate's morning was filled with meetings related to her patronages, but she found it difficult to concentrate fully. She was excited about Charlotte's play date, but also slightly nervous about how the afternoon would go. This was the first time Charlotte had invited a school friend home since the recent troubles, and Kate wanted everything to go smoothly. She had spoken with the household staff about keeping the afternoon as normal and low-key as possible. There would be no formal protocols or special arrangements, just two children spending time together like friends anywhere else might do. William had arranged to be home early from his engagements so he could meet Lucy briefly and see how Charlotte was doing with her first post-crisis social invitation. When Kate arrived at school for pickup, she was pleased to see Charlotte and Lucy walking out of the building together, deep in animated conversation. Both girls looked excited and comfortable with each other. "Mummy, this is Lucy," Charlotte said, introducing her friend with obvious pride. Lucy stepped forward politely. "It's very nice to meet you, Your Royal Highness. Thank you for inviting me to your home." Kate was charmed by Lucy's combination of good manners and genuine excitement. "It's wonderful to meet you, Lucy. Charlotte has been looking forward to this all week." During the drive to Kensington Palace, Kate listened to the girls discuss their school day. Lucy was clearly impressed by Charlotte's presentation to the younger students. "You made constitutional monarchy sound really interesting," Lucy told Charlotte. "I never realized how much the royal family actually does that people don't see. Most people think we just wear crowns and wave," Charlotte replied with a giggle. "But there's actually a lot of work involved in supporting charities and meeting with government officials." Kate was proud to hear Charlotte talking about their family's role with such understanding and confidence. The contrast with her earlier anxiety about being royal was remarkable. When they arrived at the palace, Kate noticed Lucy's eyes widen as they passed through the security gates and approached the building. But rather than being intimidated, she seemed genuinely curious and excited. "Charlotte, your house is incredible," Lucy said, looking around with wonder. "Is it very old?" "Parts of it are from the 17th century," Charlotte replied knowledgeably. "Would you like me to show you some of the historical features? There are some really interesting paintings and artifacts." Kate was delighted to see Charlotte taking pride in her home and heritage rather than feeling embarrassed by them. The girls spent the first part of the afternoon exploring some of the palace's public areas, with Charlotte acting as an enthusiastic tour guide. "This portrait is of King George II," Charlotte explained, stopping in front of a large painting. "He was the last British monarch to personally lead troops into battle." Lucy listened attentively to Charlotte's explanations, asking thoughtful questions and showing genuine interest in the history. Kate, following at a discreet distance, was impressed by both girls' engagement with the material. When they reached Charlotte's private rooms, Lucy was immediately drawn to the large collection of books that filled one wall of Charlotte's bedroom. "You have so many books," Lucy exclaimed. "Have you read all of them?" "Most of them," Charlotte replied proudly. "I love reading about different countries and time periods. Would you like to see some of my favorites?" The girls spent some time looking through Charlotte's book collection, with Charlotte recommending titles that Lucy might enjoy. Kate was touched to see Charlotte sharing something she was passionate about with such enthusiasm. William arrived home just as the girls were settling down to work on their history projects. He poked his head into Charlotte's room to say hello and meet Lucy. "How are the research projects going?" he asked, genuinely interested. "Really well, sir," Lucy replied. "Charlotte has been helping me understand the relationship between the monarchy and Parliament. It's much more complex than I thought." William smiled at Charlotte, clearly proud of her knowledge and willingness to help her friend. "Charlotte knows quite a lot about these topics. I hope she's being helpful without being too much of a show-off." Both girls giggled at William's teasing tone. "She's been wonderful," Lucy assured him. "I'm learning so much." After William left, the girls continued working on their projects, comparing their research, and discussing the similarities and differences between constitutional monarchies and presidential systems. Kate, checking on them periodically, was impressed by the depth of their conversation and their collaborative approach to learning. During tea time, the girls were joined by George and Louis, who were curious about Charlotte's friend. Lucy handled the introduction to Charlotte's brothers with grace, treating them as normal children rather than being overly formal or awed by the royal connection. "Do you want to see our secret fort in the garden?" George asked Lucy, immediately including her in the siblings' activities. "That sounds like fun," Lucy replied enthusiastically. "Charlotte, should we take a break from our projects?" The four children spent the next hour playing in the palace gardens, with Lucy fitting seamlessly into the family's normal afternoon routine. Kate watched from a window as Charlotte showed Lucy around the outdoor play areas, pointing out favorite climbing trees and hidden corners where they liked to have picnics. What struck Kate most was how natural and relaxed Charlotte seemed. She wasn't trying to impress Lucy or apologizing for their family circumstances. Instead, she was simply sharing her world with a friend, confident that Lucy would appreciate it for what it was. When it was time for Lucy's mother to collect her, Both girls seemed disappointed that the afternoon was ending so quickly. "Thank you so much for having me," Lucy said to Kate as they waited for her mother to arrive. "This has been one of the most interesting afternoons I've ever had." "You're welcome anytime, Lucy. Charlotte has been so happy to share her interests with you." Mrs. Pemberton arrived promptly, and Kate was pleased to see that she seemed relaxed and friendly rather than nervous or overly formal. "I hope Lucy hasn't been too much trouble," Mrs. Pemberton said. "She's been talking about this play date for days." "She's been delightful," Kate assured her. The girls have had a wonderful time together. As Lucy said goodbye to Charlotte, both girls were already making plans for their next get-together. "Maybe next time you could come to my house," Lucy suggested. "It's not nearly as interesting as yours, but my mom makes excellent cookies." "I would love that," Charlotte replied enthusiastically. "And you could show me your book collection, too." After Lucy and her mother left, Charlotte was practically glowing with happiness and pride. "Mummy, that was the best afternoon," she said, throwing her arms around Kate in a spontaneous hug. Lucy loved everything, and she asked such good questions about the palace and about constitutional monarchy. "I could see how much fun you both had," Kate replied, hugging her daughter back. "You were an excellent hostess, Charlotte. You made Lucy feel welcome while also sharing things you're passionate about." "Do you think she really enjoyed herself? Or was she just being polite?" Kate thought about Lucy's genuine excitement and engagement throughout the afternoon. "I think she genuinely enjoyed herself very much. You could see how interested she was in everything you showed her, and her questions were thoughtful and curious rather than just polite." Charlotte beamed at this assessment. "I can't wait to go to her house next time." She said her family has a greenhouse where they grow their own vegetables, and she wants to show me how to plant seeds. That evening at dinner, Charlotte regaled William with detailed accounts of the afternoon's activities. Her excitement and confidence were infectious, and Kate found herself feeling deeply grateful for how far Charlotte had come in such a short time. "I'm very proud of how you handled your first play date back at home," William told Charlotte. "You showed Lucy that being royal doesn't mean being different from other children in the ways that really matter." "What do you mean, Daddy?" Charlotte asked. "Well, you shared your interests, you listened to hers, you played together, you learned from each other, all the things that good friends do. The fact that your home happens to be a palace didn't change the important parts of friendship." Charlotte considered this thoughtfully. "I think I understand. Being royal is about what we do and how we help people, but it doesn't change what makes us good friends or good people." Kate exchanged a meaningful look with William, both of them amazed by their daughter's growing wisdom and self-understanding. Later that evening, as Kate tucked Charlotte into bed, her daughter reflected on the day with obvious satisfaction. "Mummy, I was thinking about what you said a few weeks ago about our family circumstances being gifts we can share rather than burdens we need to apologize for." "Yes, I remember that conversation. I think today was the first time I really felt that way. When I was showing Lucy around and explaining about constitutional monarchy, it felt good to share what I know instead of feeling embarrassed about it." Kate felt her eyes fill with tears at the maturity and insight in Charlotte's words. "That makes me so happy to hear, sweetheart. That's exactly how I hoped you would come to see things. And Lucy didn't make me feel weird about living in a palace or having royal duties. She thought it was interesting, but she still treated me like a normal friend." "That's because you are a normal friend, Charlotte. You just happen to have some unusual circumstances in your life, but your heart and your friendship are exactly the same as any other child's." Charlotte smiled sleepily. "I think I'm starting to really believe that now." As Kate turned off the light and left Charlotte's room, she reflected on the remarkable transformation her daughter had undergone in just 2 weeks. From a child who felt burdened by her royal status to one who was beginning to see it as an interesting aspect of her identity that could enrich her friendships and contribute to her education. Kate knew there would still be challenges ahead. Growing up royal would always come with unique pressures and expectations. But seeing Charlotte's growing confidence and her ability to form genuine friendships while being authentic about her circumstances gave Kate hope that they were on the right path. The playdate had been more than just a successful social afternoon. It had been a milestone in Charlotte's development of a healthy relationship with her royal identity. For the first time, Charlotte had been able to share her world with a peer without apology or embarrassment, and that friend had responded with genuine interest and acceptance. Kate felt confident that this experience would serve as a foundation for Charlotte's future social relationships, and her growing understanding of how to balance her royal responsibilities with her personal need for authentic friendships and normal childhood experiences. 3 months had passed since Charlotte's difficult period at school, and as Kate watched her daughter get ready for the annual school charity fundraising event, she marveled at the transformation. Charlotte was not only participating enthusiastically in the event, but had volunteered to help organize activities for younger children, showing a confidence and leadership that would have seemed impossible during those dark days in early autumn. The charity event was particularly meaningful for Charlotte because it was raising funds for children's literacy programs, a cause close to Kate's heart through her own patronages. Charlotte had suggested that her class create a presentation about the importance of reading in different countries, incorporating some of her research on various government systems and how they supported education. Mummy, do you think people will be interested in learning about how constitutional monarchies support education compared to other government systems? Charlotte asked as she adjusted her school uniform and gathered her presentation materials. Kate smiled at the sophisticated nature of Charlotte's question. I think they'll find it fascinating, especially the way you've connected it to literacy programs. You've put together such thoughtful research. Charlotte had indeed created an impressive presentation that wove together her constitutional monarchy research with information about royal patronages supporting education and literacy. She had even included examples from other countries with constitutional monarchies, showing how different royal families around the world supported similar causes. And you're not nervous about presenting to all the parents and families who will be there? Kate asked gently, remembering how anxious Charlotte had been about public attention just a few months earlier. Charlotte considered the question seriously. I'm a little nervous, but it's the good kind of nervous, like when you're excited about sharing something you care about. It's different from the scared feeling I used to have. Kate felt a surge of pride at her daughter's emotional intelligence and self-awareness. Charlotte had clearly learned to distinguish between healthy performance nerves and the anxiety that had previously overwhelmed her. The drive to school was filled with Charlotte's excited review of her presentation and her questions about some of the family friends and dignitaries who might be attending the event. Kate was pleased to note that Charlotte's curiosity about the attendees seemed to stem from genuine interest in sharing her research rather than worry about making a good impression. When they arrived at the school, the main hall was already bustling with activity. Parents, teachers, and students were setting up displays, arranging chairs, and putting finishing touches on various presentations and activities. Charlotte immediately spotted Lucy Pemberton across the room and waved enthusiastically. Lucy and her class are doing a presentation about environmental conservation in different political systems, Charlotte told Kate. We've been helping each other with research questions. Kate watched as Charlotte ran over to greet Lucy and several other classmates, all of whom welcomed her warmly. The contrast with Charlotte's social interactions from a few months earlier was striking. She approached her peers with confidence and genuine excitement about seeing them. Mrs. Henderson appeared at Kate's side, also watching the children's interactions with obvious satisfaction. It's remarkable how much Charlotte has changed since the beginning of the school year, the teacher observed. She's become one of our most confident and socially engaged students. We're very grateful for your support during that difficult period, Kate replied. Your approach made all the difference in helping Charlotte find her footing. I think Charlotte's own resilience and your family's commitment to open communication were the real keys to her success. But I'm glad we could provide a supportive environment for her growth. Kate's attention was drawn to a conversation Charlotte was having with a group of younger students who were clustered around the display she had created. Charlotte was patiently explaining some of the concepts from her presentation, adjusting her language to make it accessible for the younger children. Princess Charlotte, one of the Year 3 students, said, My mom says your granny is the queen. Is that really true? Charlotte handled the question with remarkable poise. Yes, that's true. My grandmother is Queen Elizabeth II. But today I'm here as a student, just like you, sharing what I've learned about how governments support education. Kate was impressed by Charlotte's ability to acknowledge her royal connection while redirecting the conversation to the educational content she was passionate about sharing. As the event officially began, Kate found a seat where she could watch Charlotte's presentation while remaining inconspicuous. She was joined by several other parents, including Mrs. Pemberton, who had become friendly acquaintances through their daughter's growing friendship. Lucy has learned so much from working with Charlotte, Mrs. Pemberton commented. She comes home full of fascinating information about government systems and international affairs. It's wonderful to see the girls inspiring each other's learning. Kate appreciated Mrs. Pemberton's perspective, especially given the family's initial concerns about the royal presence at the school. Charlotte has benefited enormously from Lucy's friendship as well. Having a friend who shares her intellectual curiosity has been wonderful for her confidence. When Charlotte's turn came to present, Kate watched her daughter walk to the front of the room with calm confidence. Charlotte began her presentation by acknowledging the diverse audience and explaining how she had become interested in the connection between government systems and educational support. I started researching constitutional monarchy for a school project, Charlotte began, but I became fascinated by how different types of government support learning and literacy. Today, I want to share some of what I've discovered and hear about your own experiences with education programs. Kate was struck by Charlotte's inclusive approach, making it clear that she wanted to learn from the audience as much as share her own research. This was a far cry from the worried child who had feared being perceived as showing off just a few months earlier. Charlotte's presentation was engaging and informative, covering how royal patronages worked in various constitutional monarchies to support education, how these efforts compare to similar programs in other government systems, and specific examples of literacy initiatives around the world. She included interactive elements, asking audience members to share their own experiences with educational programs and literacy initiatives. During the question and answer portion, Charlotte fielded inquiries with impressive knowledge and grace. When one parent asked about her personal experience with royal patronages, Charlotte answered thoughtfully. I've been fortunate to accompany my parents to visits with various educational charities, she said. What I've learned is that the most effective programs are the ones that listen to what communities actually need rather than assuming they know what's best. The royal family's role is to support and amplify the work that dedicated people are already doing. Kate felt a surge of emotion at her daughter's sophisticated understanding of their family's role and responsibilities. Charlotte had clearly internalized the values Kate and William had tried to instill about service and humility. After Charlotte's presentation, she was surrounded by classmates, parents, and younger students who wanted to continue the conversation. Kate watched as her daughter engaged with each person thoughtfully, answering questions and showing genuine interest in others' perspectives. Lucy Pemberton's presentation on environmental conservation was equally impressive, and Kate was delighted to see Charlotte cheering enthusiastically for a friend and asking thoughtful questions during the discussion period. During the break between presentations, Kate had an opportunity to speak privately with Charlotte about how the morning was going. How are you feeling about everything so far? Kate asked. Charlotte's face was glowing with excitement and satisfaction. I'm feeling wonderful, Mummy. People ask such good questions, and I learn new things from their comments and experiences. Mrs. Patterson told me about a literacy program in her home country that I had never heard of before. And you're not feeling overwhelmed by all the attention? Charlotte considered this carefully. It's different now. When people are interested in what I'm sharing because they genuinely want to learn something, it feels good. It's only uncomfortable when I feel like they're focusing on me personally rather than on the information or ideas. Kate marveled at her daughter's ability to articulate such a sophisticated distinction. Charlotte had clearly developed the ability to differentiate between productive attention focused on her contributions and unwanted attention focused on her status or personal circumstances. "I'm so proud of how you've handled everything today," Kate told her daughter. "Your presentation was informative and engaging, and you've shown real leadership in how you've included younger students in the discussions." Charlotte beamed at the praise, but Kate could see that her confidence was genuinely internal rather than dependent on external validation. The afternoon portion of the event included various activities and displays organized by different classes. Charlotte was responsible for running a reading station where younger children could choose books and have older students read with them. Kate watched as Charlotte patiently helped a shy Year 2 student select an appropriate book and then sat with her to read together. "She's wonderful with the younger children," commented Mr. Davies, whose son was one of Charlotte's reading partners for the afternoon. "James has been talking about Princess Charlotte's kindness for weeks. He says she always remembers his name and asks about his interests when she sees him in the hallway." Kate felt a deep sense of satisfaction at this comment. Teaching Charlotte to be considerate of others, especially younger or more vulnerable people, had been a priority for Kate and William. Seeing that Charlotte was naturally applying these values in her daily interactions was deeply rewarding. As the event continued, Kate observed Charlotte moving seamlessly between different activities and conversations. She helped younger children with reading, engaged in substantive discussions with parents about education policy, collaborated with her classmates on various tasks, and even had a thoughtful conversation with the school's headmaster about potential future projects related to government studies. What struck Kate most was how comfortable Charlotte seemed in all these different interactions. She wasn't putting on a performance or trying to be what others expected. She was simply being herself while engaging genuinely with the people and ideas around her. During the event's closing ceremony, the headmaster specifically mentioned Charlotte's presentation as an example of the kind of thoughtful, research-based learning the school hoped to inspire in all its students. Charlotte accepted the recognition graciously, but without apparent discomfort or self-consciousness. As families began to leave, Kate noticed Charlotte exchanging contact information with several classmates for future study sessions and planning another playdate with Lucy. The ease with which Charlotte was making these social arrangements was a stark contrast to her earlier anxiety about peer relationships. "Mummy," Charlotte said as they walked to the car, "thank you for helping me understand that being royal doesn't mean I have to hide what I know or apologize for our family's experiences." Kate felt tears prick her eyes at her daughter's gratitude and insight. "You've worked so hard to find that balance, Charlotte. I'm amazed by your growth and confidence. I think I finally understand what you and Daddy meant about using our circumstances to help and contribute rather than seeing them as problems to manage. Today felt like I was sharing things that might actually be useful to other people." As they drove home, Charlotte chattered excitedly about the day's events, the new things she had learned from other presentations, and